Hey, my friends. This is Erica Bernando's granddaughter. Something I've been wanting to do for a while is just kind of go to different places in New York City that have something to do with Bernando's history. So I am down here in Battery Park, and there is a monument that has been dedicated to the seamen who died during World War II, who drowned at sea and didn't make it home. So I'm going to walk around this and I'm going to show you the front side of the monument first. And now we're at the back side of the monument, and of course this is what called out to me in particular, because the back side of the monument is dedicated for those between the years of 1941 and 1945. And it says, in addition to the 4,597 American servicemen honored here who lost their lives in her service and who sleep in the American coastal waters of the Atlantic Ocean, the United States of America honors the 6,185 seamen of the United States Merchant Marines and the 529 seamen of the United States Army Transport Service who lost their lives during World War II. So this is significant because if you read my grandfather's book, Age Less, Live More, and also if you just happen to know him in person, he often told the story about his experiences during the Second World War. He wasn't enlisted in the army in terms of someone who was fighting, because I believe he was considered to be too old at that point, because during these years in 1941 he would have already been 40 years old. But he was working as a merchant marine. Now when I think about this now, it's pretty amazing, because he worked as a seaman and worked in the capacity as a chef for many, many years. Of course, so now during the war, he still needed to support his family and get his hustle on, so he became a merchant marine. And when you read that part of the story, he explains that once he was in Europe, U-boats were always searching for enemy aircrafters, and they were sinking them with missiles at sea. So in this particular story that I'm referring to, he explains that he was in town, right, because naval people, seamen, sailors, etc., people who work at sea, they will get a leave of absence, and you can go to the port of call and maybe get a leave of absence for a few hours or 24 hours or whatever it is. So he did that, and on his way back to port, because he had to be back at a certain time, he was trying to get on a bus to go back to port. But when he ran to the bus to get on the last bus that was going back to the port, the doors were slammed in his face and the bus took off, because apparently, there was an air raid going on. There were sirens going on. So there he was, unable to get back into the port. So he decided that the best course of action was to stay in town and, try and find somewhere to sleep, somewhere to spend the night. So as fate would have it, he ended up spending the night with a very elderly lady who, lived in a very humble dwelling. He said, there was just a cot and there was a chair. She didn't seem to have any food, right? And she offered him the bed, but he said, no, that's okay. The helicopter flying overhead. He said, no, that's all right. I'll just sit in this chair. I will fall asleep in the chair. Now, to be clear, part of his mission of going into town was that he went into town to actually, I believe, buy some whiskey, someone on the boat wanted some whiskey, and even though he didn't drink himself, he was always very amenable, to people who wanted some service performed. So the only thing that he had with him was a little whiskey. And he said, would you like a drink? And she said, oh yes, I would like that. Because of course people were living under rations, or they were living with next to nothing at this point, and having something like a drink, especially for an old lady like this, who probably wasn't getting any pension or didn't have any God knows what. This was quite a luxury. Oh yes. So he said, those jelly jars they used to have, you would empty the jelly jar and then you would be able to use it afterwards as a glass. He said, so I filled it right at the top, and the old lady took it and drank it down in one shot and said, oh, thank you very much. That was wonderful. And then they went to sleep. He fell asleep in the chair, and she went to sleep in the bed. So now the next morning comes, and he asks her, do you have any food? She says, no, I don't have anything. So, of course, Grandpa always had money in his pocket. I don't care where he was. Somehow, he always had money in his pocket. So he he waved someone down out on the street during the day that had a motorcycle that also had a little sidecar, a little side seat to it. So he got on the back of the bike, put the old lady in the sidecar, went somewhere, I think managed to get her some ham, if I'm not mistaken, and then said to the gentleman, how much will you charge me, to take her back to her home? And he said £1. So my grandfather gave the guy £1, and so she was escorted back to her home, because of course it was going to be very challenging for this old lady to walk all the way back home, uphill or whatever, to get back. And then he went on his way, and he said, take me to the port. So he got to the port of call, where his boat was supposed to be waiting for him. So when he got to the port of call, his colleagues, the seamen, said, oh my God, Q, you're still alive, And he said, of course I'm still alive, I'm here, aren't I? So it turns out that last bus that was going down to the port of call, down to the harbor, in the air raid, a bomb was dropped on it. And everyone in the bus was killed. Emotional. So sometimes things that seem to be an inconvenience for us are actually a blessing in disguise. So when I think about this, and when I think about how close my grandfather came to death, I wouldn't be here today. My mother, my siblings, his grandchildren, his other grandchildren, etc., wouldn't be here, and we wouldn't have this extraordinary knowledge that we have on how to live your best life and to age less and live more. So there was another incident like this that he went through. He went through many epiphanies and sort of dramatic moments. So in his book, Age Less, Live More, he says, as I read over on the video that I posted for you last week on his 123rd birthday anniversary, that he said, as long as you have peace of mind and you even see things that appear to be setbacks as actual blessings for you, then you will always be able to go through life with a sense of peace and a sense of serenity. So I hope that you found this interesting and enlightening. I think about Bernardo all the time. He's a very strong presence in my life, always. And if you ever make it down to Battery Park, if you happen to be going to visit Ellis Island, you will pass his monument on the way, along with the United States Army Air Force records of the known deceased on these walls. There is a memorial down here, this war memorial, and I encourage you to stop by and take a look and just reflect on the preciousness of life, because of course, tomorrow is not promised. My name is Erica. I'm Bernardo Lopalo's oldest grandchild, and I'm the maintainer of his legacy. God bless.
The battery park.
The front of this says, erected by the United States of America in proud and grateful remembrance of her sons who gave their lives in her service and who sleep in the American coastal waters of the Atlantic Ocean. Into thy hands, O Lord.